It's time for another edition of Saturday with Seniors. A big thank you to our sponsor, FCCB. The local branch is sponsoring today's edition in Blossburg, Mansfield, and Wellsboro, serving our community for over 150 years. And joining us in our studios, Dorothy Kreger, 91 years old. And welcome in, Dorothy.
Welcome.
Well, thank you for coming to our studios here. You drove yourself down to the show.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, good for you. So I want to hear all about your life, in particular your early days and some of your earliest memories and where you were born and what your parents did for work and where you went to school and if you had electricity as a kid and if you remember TV and all those type of things. So where were you born? Let's start at the very first thing.
I was born at, it's out of Liberty, but its address is Roaring Branch. So I was born in Roaring Branch, RD.
Yep. So that was the rural area of that.
Right.
So were you born in a house that had electricity or running water or?
Well, my grandfather was the first one that had lights, but they weren't electric. He put in a carbide thing in the yard, like a big tank.
Yeah.
And then he put the lamps for them on the walls in places. And so we had lights.
Like sort of like gas lights, like lanterns that were lights?
They were done with that carbide some way. You know, that's what the miners used.
Yeah.
And so
you remember the carbide lights?
Oh, yeah. We also had kerosene lamps and so on, too. But my grandfather, this is the house where I was born. He's the one that did that.
So he was quite a handyman with creative stuff. That was new technology to light a house back then.
Yeah, well, I took it for granted because I was just a kid, you know. But as I got older, I realized he must have been a pretty intelligent man.
Yeah, this is your grandpa you're talking about, right?
Yeah, my grandfather.
Was he a farmer, or what did he do for work?
Yeah, he was a farmer.
And what type of work did your parents do?
Dad did a lot of different things. He was in the woods cutting logs and stuff and worked on the lumber mill. And he worked as an electrician. And when we moved to Buttonwood, he was caretaker of the highway then for most of his life. But then he worked at Ward's Foundry. After he retired from the one job, he went to the other.
So at what point did you have electricity in your house then? You started off with the carbide lights?
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you plugged something in and said, hey, look at that?
I know we had lights down in Buttonwood when we moved down there. They weren't fancy, but we had lights. But I don't remember when Granddad got them there.
So how old were you when you moved to Buttonwood, give or take?
I'd gone 2 grades to the Taylor Schoolhouse.
The which schoolhouse? The Taylor Schoolhouse?
The Taylor Schoolhouse.
And where? That's the one that was in between Roaring Branch and Liberty?
Yeah, well, where I was born is on a hill. And you go down the hill, and at the bottom is the Taylor Schoolhouse. I mean, you had a good long walk.
And you go sled there in the wintertime? That'd be the easy way to get there, huh?
My dad did, when he was little, they had a lot of ice on the top of the snow, you know, and it would get hard. And so he took his sled to the school. Well, being there was all that crust on the snow, he couldn't stop, so he went on through the barbed wire fence and took the bottom of his pants off.
We can laugh now, I guess. But So is that building still there now?
It is, but they've made it into, I think, a camp, the last I knew.
So tell me about that school. Was it a one-room schoolhouse? Describe the inside of the school. The old school desk. Did you dip the pen in the inkwell back then?
Oh, yeah.
And heated with coal or wood, like a stove of some sort like that?
Right in the middle of the schoolroom.
And when they talk about chalkboards, the old slate boards, you were actually probably even using slate boards. Like when you took notes at school, did you have a little slate board that you wrote on? Or no?
We had paper.
Paper and dip pens with the inkwell.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And you had to learn to write, you know, on these tablets that had for the capital letters and the small letters.
So penmanship was taught in school?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because, well, my penmanship wasn't taught all that well to me, if you look at the way I write.
Well, you had to learn to write correctly.
Yes.
And nowadays they don't do it. In fact, they aren't even teaching
cursive writing.
No, and I'm wondering how are you going to sign your bank statement or something.
Absolutely.
People aren't going to be able to do that.
Yeah. What else do you remember about school in the one-room schoolhouse? Do you have any other memories? Or
Oh, yeah, going out for recess. One thing, others too, is scoring whether you have to go to the potty when you're going, whether you're as number 2 or number 1.
you had to let the teacher know.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the way you did it.
And the potty was outside, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the wintertime, you didn't want to take any extra time than you had to.
No. Most people, they had outhouses anyway then.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't something new to them because that's the way you lived.
I've used, a drop toilet there, but the outhouse in the old days, they were actually literally a hole into the ground, right? There wasn't a holding tank. So what would they do? Move the outhouse and dig a new hole? Is that how
there was like a trap door behind this toilet, and they would clean it out every so often.
Who got that job? The one who got in trouble?
I don't remember. I remember them doing it. They put like a manure wagon, shovel it into, and that's the way they cleaned it.
I often wondered whether they just waited till the hole filled up and started over at the new hole, or how they did it. But I guess
those times when I remembered, it was put on the fields.
Yeah.
You know, people didn't think.
But there was toilet paper. Oh, didn't use toilet paper. What was there? Corn cob, or did you use the Sears catalog or toilet paper then?
I don't remember. Probably Sears Roebuck catalog. You know, that's what most people had.
Yeah.
And so I don't think
Sears catalog, you had 600 pages of toilet paper there.
The toilet paper wasn't that common.
So any other memories of school? This is interesting stuff to me.
Yeah, I was telling Len the other day that...
When you say Len, that's Dr. Kreger, by the way, from the Wellsboro Pet Complex. This is Dr. Kreger's mom in our studio here, Dorothy Kreger. So yes, what were you telling your son?
In the first 2 years of school, I remember we had to take castor oil every day. And that was to prevent some kind of a disease, I don't know. But anyway, the teacher would stand there with a bottle of castor oil and a tablespoon, and she would pour it on. You took it on the same tablespoon
as the next person. We're trying to keep everybody healthy. Let's put the same spoon in everybody's mouth. Wow. Well, you weren't washing your hands after you went to the latrine either, obviously.
No, probably not.
Because there's no running water.
They would have a basin with the soap and stuff there, but they would be everybody using it.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be.
So what about?
We had to carry water.
Yeah.
And then. You know, there was no running water.
I was going to ask, did you have to go out to the well and pump water if you were thirsty during class?
I do not know where they...
They must have had a hand pump somewhere and brought it there. Hopefully not right next to the outhouse.
No. But probably they would have it, and I just don't remember it.
Yeah. Did you have pencils in school as well? Or one other person who joined us told me she was given one pencil a month at school to use and has to last the whole month.
Yeah.
Did you have the same kind of...
I don't recall, because I was only there 2 years.
I gotcha.
You know, the first 2 years. Next year I went to Buttonwood, and that again was a one-room school. Like
that one is still standing in Buttonwood when you drive through. I've seen that.
They've moved it back from the road. That used to be closer to the road, but us kids, we could go up either.
That's okay. She bumped the microphone with her hands. She's all excited talking all with your hands.
The porch was so that they walked up on both sides.
Yeah.
And so we'd walk up on the side of there, but there was no play place in front of the school. It was behind. So I don't know when they moved it back, but they made it more of a community building and so on now.
Now, do you remember polio vaccines in school and when polio was around? And a lot of people are surprised about how polio affected so many people. And do you remember kids being affected when you were younger?
Yeah, I remember a girl from Liberty that was left crippled from it and so on. But they said my brother and I had polio, and I didn't know it. So when I was expecting my third baby, the doctor said something about polio, and I said no. And then one time when he's examining me, he said to his nurse, "Go get something, you know." And I didn't know why, but she came back with a tape measure, and she measured my leg, and he said, "I never noticed that before." And I said, well, what's the matter? And he said, well, your one leg is, I think he said, an inch bigger around than the other. And I had been having trouble with growing pains, they called it, because of my legs. Yep. And if I got out of bed, go right down on the floor. And he said, you've had polio, and that's your leg problem. And I said, well, I don't think so. Then I went home and I said to Mom, they told me that I had polio. She said, oh, yes, you and Jack both.
But you didn't get crippled by it as many people did.
No, and I don't remember being sick by it.
Did you get the polio vaccine? Do you remember that? Was that given in school to the students? Or I know someone in Wellsboro told me in the basement they lined up all the kids. And
they probably did.
Yeah.
There was doctors that come. It would always bother me when I had, so I don't remember which one.
Yeah. What was Buttonwood like as a kid now? For those that don't know, Buttonwood is just south of Liberty. It's actually slightly in Lycoming County, but it's about 3 or 4 miles south of Liberty. Was there any stores, shops, places to get any groceries there in Buttonwood?
There was a John Deere dealership.
Yeah.
There was a grocery store. Then he had everything, a country store.
Yeah.
And there was a horse shoer.
There was a farrier there.
Yeah. And he was right across the road from the store.
Yeah.
And the store
was the covered bridge that was there then too, I imagine? Okay.
Yeah. My brother built a house above it when he was first married. He lived in the second house above it.
Huh. So was it bigger than Buttonwood? Wow. Or was it just people didn't travel so that stores could be supported? Because it's hard to imagine now with 12 houses there supporting a store of any type.
Yeah, well, you're not looking at the ones that lived a mile or two away.
Yeah.
Because they're back roads and so on too, and they would come there.
Yeah.
At one time, there was 2 bars in Buttonwood.
No way.
Yeah.
You could put food and everything?
That was before my time.
Yeah.
But my grandfather, Alexander, was the proprietor of one of them.
Wow.
We were like a family in Buttonwood. Everybody was like our family.
Yeah.
And so I didn't learn till I was married that the old man that I would go up and hold his hand, he was an invalid in bed, and that lady was my grandmother's cousin. I never knew that. They were Mr. and Mrs. Long,
Yeah. So, I mean, when you were a kid, there were Civil War veterans still alive. I don't know if you ever had a chance to meet the Civil War veteran. You might not have a memory of whether you did or didn't, but
I don't remember whether I did. My grandfather was a veteran.
I mean, they would have been 90 years old at the time that you were a little kid, 90-something years old.
I should say my great-grandfather. But,
was a Civil War veteran?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Very interesting. So from Buttonwood, if you wanted to go somewhere else for shopping or for anything, where did your family go and how often? Did they go into Liberty? Did they go to Morris, to Williamsport?
Mostly to Blossburg.
Oh, all the way over to Blossburg from there. Because that would be a good 15 miles. And was Route 15, your earliest memories, was a paved road, I assume?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because the back road, there wasn't a lot of back roads paved back in the 1940s.
Yeah. The main roads.
Yeah.
It was on 15, and that was the main road.
Yep. The double lane highway was not even thought of then.
The reason that you'd go to Blossburg was you needed more than what Liberty had.
Yeah.
Some shoes or go to the movies on Saturday afternoon.
The Victoria Theater?
Yeah. And we went to Canton a lot. And when I say a lot, that's maybe 2 times a month.
So what I gathered from people is they left their town only about once a week to go somewhere for supplies at most. Not like today where people 4 or 5 days a week will run 15 miles to some.
You had to prepare to live on what you bought for a whole week because you aren't going to get to the store.
Sure.
And most women weren't driving because the man had the car.
Yeah, they're a little more of a traditional type family. I don't know if traditional is the right word, but traditional family then meant the husband worked, the wife took care of the house and the kids. I don't know who had the tougher or easier job because both I'm sure were an armful.
Yeah, they were, but I had a wonderful childhood.
So how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 2 brothers and 1 sister. The 2 girls were the oldest. I was the oldest, and then my 2 brothers.
Yeah. And then how many kids did you have?
I lost a set of twins, and then Steve, Len, and Marcy.
So 5 kids.
Yeah.
Any of them born in your house?
Oh, no, I went to Blossburg Hospital.
Okay, modern. Because did the
Yeah.
doctor still make house calls when you were a kid? Because that was about the time house
Yeah.
calls were...
When I was at my mother's place, Bob and I both, I went into labor, and I had gone to my mom's house, rather, because I lived in Blossburg at that time. But
So you moved from Button, went to Blossburg
I
before you
went
ended up with
from-
kids. I got
yeah,
you.
and then I went down, got a bus, and went down home. So I was at home when I started labor. I didn't know that's what I was having
Yeah.
for the twins. And this doctor, Dr. Buckley, came down, and he wouldn't let anyone touch me. He carried me down, and the veins in his neck just stood out. I was a small person at that time.
Well, with twins, you were a beach ball, but small.
Yeah, but I remember him carrying it down, and that was my first and only ambulance ride. I don't know where the ambulance
Yeah.
came from, whether it was Blossburg, I would have guessed.
I'm trying to picture what an ambulance. We're talking 1940 something here, right? Early 40s.
No, they were born February 50, and I do not know where. I would assume the hospital.
So you moved from Buttonwood to Blossburg. Was that right after you graduated school, or did you find your love of your life and move? What made you move to Blossburg?
My husband had a job at his uncle's mill, and we went out there,
Yeah.
made a house out of a shanty.
You made a house out of a shanty.
Yeah. And
So no building codes then. You just slapped together rough timber and
it was nothing but maybe there was 2 windows, I think, in it. There was no heat, water, or anything. We had to do it all. But I know I went down, or Bob and I, to the A&P, or no, the Grand Union it was at that time.
in Blossburg, it was called the Grand Union.
Yeah, and we got empty boxes, and we opened the boxes up flat,
Yep.
tacked them on the wall.
And that was your
And, well,
insulation.
Yeah, and then I papered it.
Yep.
And my mother gave us some linoleum for the floor that was wore out, really.
Yeah.
But we painted it green, and from then on, whenever we'd go without our shoes on, we had green socks.
So whatever happened to that house? I assume that one neither
Yeah.
got super modified or there's
You
no...
know what? Other people lived in that after we were gone.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
It was only one room
Yeah.
in there.
I mean, you built this by hand, the whole house, right? I mean, it was...
No, the cabin was there, like
Yeah.
a shanty was
Yeah.
there. And
You made it into with cardboard insulated and everything.
And then
held together by love, I guess.
Then we had logs, the slabs off the log for the mill where he worked.
Yeah.
They
The bark and all you're talking about.
He'd plane them so the edges are smooth, and he tacked them on the outside of the wall. And it looked like a log cabin. Len can show you the picture of that because
Yeah.
he just found this out too. That's how we
He told me to ask you about the shanty that you lived in. Yeah.
we had a little heater stove and a little.
But still
tiny
no electricity ever in this
oh,
place
no.
as long as you live there.
No.
So tell me about your family's car when you were a kid. Do you remember what your parents were driving, or do you remember the first car that you... What first car you have a memory of?
I don't remember Dad not having a car, but Grandpa's when we lived there for a while. They had horses and
Yeah.
horse and buggies, and they didn't use the buggies so much because Granddad had a car that he could drive, and I know there was at least 2 team of horses out there, maybe 3 that he used, because that's all they used on the farm. I
Yeah.
never remember my grandparents having a tractor ever.
Wow. You obviously got your driver's license because you drove yourself here. How old were you when you first got your driver's license?
What is it, 16?
Well, 16, yeah, that's the age, I think now, and was back
think
then. So
then.
you right away got your driver's license?
My dad taught me to drive. And that I remember there were like drums at a certain alewick, and
Yeah.
I had to learn to park between them.
Parallel park, you mean? With an
No.
Oh, just park between them.
That's the way they didn't have parallel parking.
Yeah.
They,
I hadn't invented that direction yet.
they had to park
That was a bad
end to
invention,
end.
by the way.
Yeah, well,
Nobody
that's
likes
the way
it. Yeah.
down here even. Most of them are sighted. But I went to Wellsboro when I took my test. And
At the courthouse is where I hear people took their driver's tests back then.
it was up near the school somewhere because I wasn't familiar with Wellsboro at that time. Anyway, when I come back, my dad said, "Well, did you pass?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, how in H did you ever do that?" He said, "When you moved out here, you nearly hit the car beside you."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, all you have to do is pull your dress above your knee."
Even then, that trick worked.
And
Huh?
I said, "That must have done it." He said, "If you passed, you had it over your head."
Oh my goodness. So I tell you what, we've got so much to talk about. We're going to have Dorothy joining us next Saturday for another edition here of Saturday with Seniors. Dorothy Kreger, 91 years old and doing wonderful. So stick around next Saturday. We'll do it again. And of course, all our episodes are on our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com and then search KC101 Hometown Country and you'll find a whole bunch of episodes here on KC101. Dorothy, appreciate you joining us and we're going to talk some more next Saturday.